Chapter 4, Wolf. Oh boy, I'm not ready. And that is all I have to report on the incident, Your Majesty. Curtsy. Fritz bows to my father before joining the knights gathered at the edge of the room. Jurian stands with them, watching everything with a stony expression.
Lady Jurian, is Lord Fitzgerald's testimony satisfactory?
Yes, Your Majesty.
And your opinion, Lucette?
I agree with Jurian, Your Majesty. This morning, my father ordered Fritz and the knights that were with me during the kidnapping to provide testimony as to what happened. Oh. The kidnappers have been awaiting their sentence in jail for the past few weeks. Today is the day they receive their punishment. I heard from Jurian that the trial has already been suspended multiple times on account of heated discussions between the king and the counselors. The case was of special interest to them because the criminals were witches. This technicality, along with the king's own busy schedule, has forced us to postpone the trial. Father motions to the guards by the front doors. It is a silent command to bring the criminals inside. Well, long time no see, you two. The kidnappers are silent as they enter the room and kneel in front of the throne.
You know the reason you have been brought here. You have been charged with the crime of kidnapping the crown princess. To this crime you have both pleaded guilty.
I glance between the man and the woman. The defiance I saw on their faces the day they stole me away is gone, replaced with resignation. These people kidnapped and threatened me. They blamed me for the divide between witches and humans and for the loss of magic.
Lucette.
My father is speaking to me in a low voice. I turn to him, startled. Yes, Your Majesty?
This crime was committed against you. As you are set to take my place, I would have you decide their punishment.
Oh, don't put this on me, Dad. Oh. I turn back to the kneeling criminals. The woman seems to quiver in her shackles, and the man is looking up at me with eyes that glimmer with unshed tears. 2 years ago, Mother would have punished them with death. She would have insisted that lenience was weakness. But these people do not deserve death. As if reading my thoughts, Father continues on a different tangent.
According to the law, your kidnapping would be tried as a first-degree crime because you were unharmed. The typical punishment is 30 years prison time, though you can certainly argue for longer.
I shake my head. No, I am unharmed. There is no need to press any further charges.
In that case, I will allow you to decide if the sentence is ample.
Sentence them to 30 years or have the sentence. Trying to think through the legalities of this. Like, usually showing mercy is a good thing, but I'm not sure if that would be the case here. Like, Dad is saying, you could push it for more years. So I feel like keeping it to 30 is already an act of mercy in itself. If I halved it, it's like I'm just missing the severity of what they've done. And already when humans don't trust, which I feel like we need to hold everyone to the same standard almost, otherwise it's not fair. But then thinking back to Fritz's route, where did someone kidnap her or something? I can't remember. It was really early in his route. And Fritz came and got her, and it was either like teach him a lesson or let him go. And we let them go, and Fritz liked that, but now we got a different Fritz. All these choices basically are for Fritz's sake. I feel like he would be upset if we halved it. Because this whole route has been, if I lost you, I would lose my mind. So, alright, I'm gonna go 30. I don't know if this is right, but I'm gonna go 30. As you are equal to every citizen in the kingdom, I will not shorten or lengthen your sentence. You will receive the standard punishment. Okay, me and Lucette were on the same line of thought. Equality across the board. I am confident in this decision. I could have chosen to lengthen their sentence, but to do so would only garner more hostility. I do not want to rule with fear. I want to rule with fairness. Out of the corner of my eyes, I can see Father smiling at me. The smile does not reach his eyes, but the look fills me with relief regardless. Okay.
Be thankful the Crown Princess did not extend your sentence. Even if it was committed in desperation, your crime is still malicious. Thank you, Your Highness.
I notice the man is bowing to me. The woman does the same. Eventually, the two of them are led from the room. Okay, so he approved of that. I glance at Fritz, who flashes a subtle smile in my direction when he catches my eye. Father clears his throat.
Now I feel as if the divide these kidnappers mentioned should be addressed.
I have already given many speeches in an effort to bring the citizens of Angielle together. Now I realize that words are not enough. Action is necessary. When I suggest this to my father, he asks what I recommend. If I am being honest, I am not yet sure. Yet I know now that words are not enough. They will not bridge this so-called divide. I would like to gather information first. Then I will speak about what happened here today, and... I press a hand to my forehead and sigh. I will find some way to resolve this problem.
Lucette, remember that this is not your problem alone to solve.
Fritz nods in agreement. Even Jurian quirks her lips when I glance in her direction. Jurian is such a broken shell of a woman in this route. She's got, like, basically no emotions anymore. I'm like, oh, Jurian. I know. Jurian and the knights are soon excused from the throne room. I am about to exit with Fritz when Father calls to us.
I have something to discuss with Lord Fitzgerald. It shouldn't take long.
Good luck, Fritz smiles.
I'll be waiting for you at the usual place, Lucette. Oh, and...
He places a hand on my shoulder and squeezes.
I'm relieved you didn't shorten their time, Lucette.
Relieved, okay. I look at Fritz in surprise. Why would I have shown them any favor? Because you were a witch and they were witches and you gotta show them some favor there. And also been like, well, maybe the witches will like me more because I was nice to some witches.
I had thought maybe you would shorten their sentences because you wanted to curry favor with the witches. I'm glad you didn't.
Alright, we were all on the same page. Grand. I thought Fritz was the most soft-hearted person I knew. Yet, in light of the recent confessions he has made, I am beginning to see he is a lot more complex than that. But still, why does he care so much? Because he could have lost you, dummy. And if I had... Fritz looks away, a forlorn look in his eyes.
It would have been like what happened with my mother.
Did your mom's killers get off? Man, this story just gets sadder by the day. What? He shakes his head.
I'll tell you about it some other time. The short story is that when the criminal who killed her was tried, the verdict was flawed.
A flawed verdict?
Anyway, I have something to discuss with His Majesty.
He steps away and turns his attention back to my father. I glance curiously between my father and Fritz, but neither reveals the topic of their conversation. Is this something else Fritz does not want to tell me? I brush my worry away with a nod, then swiftly turn and head out of the dining hall. Just gonna put a pin in that. Deal with it later, I guess. I decide to head to town with 3 knight escorts. I resolve to be productive in my time off and look for people who can help me decide what to do about the divide between witches and humans. Specifically, I look for Waltz. Before, I would have gone to the Marchant to look for him, but now, with the tavern closed, that is impossible. I guess that makes sense. Parfait did die, Dolores not around. I guess Anise is still kicking somewhere, but kinda need money to run the place. When Delora and Parfait passed away, there was no one left to watch over the Marchant. Waltz and the other boarders have since moved out. Waltz now lives on the outskirts of Angielle, but I am certain that he comes to town around this time to perform. There is no doubt in my mind that Waltz will be able to tell me more about the recent treatment of the witches. I searched the whole town square for Waltz, but he is nowhere to be found. Usually, he is in this area performing or playing with the children, yet there is no sign of him here today. Waltz, don't you worry me. I continue to look for Waltz over the next hour, occasionally stopping to speak with other townsfolk to ask if there have been any disturbances in the area. Most seem confused by the question. Was what the witches were saying not true after all? I am still searching when someone calls my name, pulling me from my thoughts. I'm thinking like either Chev or Anise?
Princess! Princess Lucette!
I turn on my heels and see a familiar man striding toward me with a bright smile on his face. A young woman walks beside him, smiling nervously. I was right about both. Okay, so it was either or. I would never forget Chevalier and Anisa's faces. My boo. I miss you so much. Oh, dear.
Long time no see, Princess. I am grateful to Lady Luck for giving me the opportunity to see you today.
Anise raises her head and smiles. It's good to see you again, Your Highness. Likewise. How is work at the clinic? 2 years ago, when the Fairytale Curses were broken, Chevalier regained his memories and returned to work as a doctor. Anise, who had always been interested in learning more about medicine, decided to stay on with him as his assistant. It has been months since I have seen either of them. Chevalier glances at Anise, a mischievous smile on his face. Anise looks away, flustered.
Won't you tell the princess the good news, Anise?
Did you ask your guy out? Did Chev give you some good flirting advice? Anise fiddles her thumbs, her expression turning sheepish. Well, we've decided to open up a pharmacy in the clinic space. A pharmacy?
Anisa's specialty has always been herbs and antidotes. We've decided that opening a pharmacy is the best way to showcase her talents.
Rather than just a clinic, we'll also have a pharmacy set up so the townsfolk can purchase natural remedies. It should, be less expensive than the medicine most apothecaries sell.
That sounds like a great idea.
Doesn't it? Anise will do just splendidly.
I hope so.
Chevalier looks at her and raises an eyebrow.
You should tell her about that other thing too, Anise.
Okay, I'm like, no, the way Chev was like, you should tell her the news. Totally about a guy. Come on, Anise, spill the deets. Who is it? Much to my surprise, Anise flushes again.
It's not, really important.
Nonsense! Being in love is always important news.
I stare between the two of them as Anise hides her face in her hands. What's this about love?
Anise met a very striking young man a few weeks back. He came to my clinic to ask for my advice, you see. In the end, he spoke with Anise for hours on end about various herbs.
Anise sighs as she removes her hands from her face.
He happened to be the son of a visiting apothecary. He was a pleasant man.
Aw, you don't have to be so shy in front of the princess, Anise. Tell her about how much you liked his smile. Or about how nice he was when he treated you to dinner.
Chevalier?
I cannot help but smile at Anice's embarrassment. Anice always did so much for others back when the Marchen was open. She deserves to be spoiled as well. I'm happy for you, Anice.
Thank you, Your Highness.
I pause to consider as Anice and Chevalier once again exchange looks. She turns away with a sigh when Chevalier winks at her. Ah, trouble. I wonder if maybe Chevalier can tell me about the witches. Chevalier, have you seen any witches in your clinic recently? The good mood fades abruptly. Oh, sorry.
I have. Many of them show up at my door saying they've been refused treatment at other clinics. One woman, who was so sickly she was on the verge of collapse, told me that she had been run out of some other place because someone was certain they'd seen her cast a Fairytale Curse before.
There was also another witch, a man who had burns on him. He came asking for some kind of ointment.
Burns? Chevalier nods.
It was a revenge crime. A man came into his potion shop and knocked everything he owned to the ground, causing an explosion.
But why?
According to the witch, the man said something about magic no longer having any place in Angielle.
The more Chevalier speaks about the incidents, the more my stomach churns. Many of these crimes were mentioned by the counselors, but no one mentioned specifically that they had been done against witches. I cannot excuse this discrimination.
I'm sorry, Princess.
Sorry? Anise smiles at me sadly.
We didn't mean to add to your stress.
You do not need to apologize. I came seeking this information because I want to help. Perhaps I can discuss some sort of safety measures with Jurian. Or maybe I should address these crimes in front of all the townsfolk.
Humans are sad creatures, aren't they? They fear things they don't understand and choose to despise them rather than open their minds. But still.
He smiles.
I've had various volunteers come in to help me tend the witches. Just as there is cruelty in this world, there is also great goodness. It just so happens that violence always speaks loudest.
Then I have no choice but to speak louder than that violence. I nod at both of them. Thank you both for your help.
Of course. We're glad that we could help, Princess.
Yes, it's always a pleasure. If you ever need anything, you are more than welcome at the clinic. Rest assured, I will always make time for you.
I will try my best to visit when I can. My talk with Chevalier has answered many of my questions, and I am relieved for it. That's about the size of his root. My talk with Chevalier has answered many of my questions, and I am relieved. It seems I do not need to search for Waltz after all. What happened to Waltz, though? I hope he hasn't been a victim of crimes. My boy. Shortly after the two excuse themselves, I head back to the palace with my guard reformed around me. I don't know. Got bad feelings. No sooner have I returned than I am met by another familiar face. Emmeline is running toward me with a package in her hands. Her smile is exuberant.
I had a feeling you'd be back soon, Lucette.
Emmeline? Were you waiting for me?
I was. I wanted to be the one to deliver this to you.
Emmeline holds the package out to me. What is this? I take the parcel from her hands and eye it curiously.
You won't know until you open it.
I raise my eyebrows. It must be important if she came to meet me at the palace gates. I do as Emmeline insists and am surprised when I behold what is inside. Oh! No, no, no. No, no. 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 No, no, no. No. Are we having a masquerade? Is this the ball that's happening? Is a masquerade? If I see Fritz in a mask that looks anything like Varg's, I'm gonna cry. No, I'm not ready. Oh, shoot. What is this route? What is this game? It makes me emotional seeing a mask. Alright. Thanks, Emmeline. Appreciate it. Alright. A mask? Emmeline claps her hand. Just the one hand. Is it like this? One hand together.
For the upcoming ball!
The upcoming ball is a masquerade? When did this happen? Emmeline seems to notice my confusion. Fritz, why was this your idea? How did I know this was your idea? Is this because I said I loved Varg and you're like, you know what? I'm bringing Varg back for my girl. Which, I mean, appreciate it, but also please don't. Okay, it's fine. It's fine.
It was Lord Fitzgerald's idea. He brought it up to Mother a few days ago. He said that mask would make things more mysterious.
I run my hands over the carefully crafted mask and shake my head in wonder. It is a delicate mask, and I cannot help but marvel at the intricacy of its design.
What do you think? It's a lovely idea, isn't it?
It is. Interesting. I wonder why Fritz wanted to alter the theme of the celebration, and why he chose masks. Looking at the mask makes me remember the masked man from 2 years ago. The man whose cocky smile I could always read beneath his mask. Varg. Fritz. Their personalities were like night and day, and yet they are the same person. That is why, even if Varg was somewhat overwhelming, I loved him regardless. How could I not when he was a part of Fritz? Besides, Varg did a great many things for me back then, too. Whether of his own volition or not, he was still my knight. I think it was a lot of his own volition. He did a lot of stuff that he didn't want to do, and then stuff that he's like, in your face, myth. Except instead of shining armor, he wore a masquerade mask and an ominous-looking cloak. Don't forget his cane.
Lucette?
Emmeline laughs when I startle.
Rod was right. I do just need to say your name loud enough.
Alright, you got me. I was just appreciating the mask. Did you buy this for me? Emmeline shakes her head.
No, it's from Lord Fitzgerald.
Fritz bought this mask for me? But then why do you have you deliver it? I clear my throat and carefully set the mask back in its package. Do you know where Fritz is now, Emmeline?
I can't say that I do. Sorry, Lucette.
He said that he would be waiting for us in our usual place, so perhaps he is in my room. The two of us always meet there before we begin our practices. It is no worry. I will find him on my own. I tuck the package beneath my arm. Thank you for delivering the mask.
Oh, it's no problem. I wanted to be the first to see the wonder on your face.
I look at her, suddenly curious. What of your mask? Have you already purchased one?
Yes, earlier today.
She flushes.
I found a special mask from Brigantia and purchased it on a whim.
A whim, you say? I've been wondering if Lance was going to show up. Oh? Aren't Brigantian masks especially flamboyant? That does not seem your style. Unless... I raise an eyebrow. Are you trying to impress someone?
Maybe I am. It just so happens that Brigantian royalty will be joining us for this celebration, since Prince Lance is attending.
Her words fade as she looks at me embarrassed. It has been less than a few months since the Brigantian nobles came to visit our palace. Claude and his brother, Lance, have been sent here on many occasions as emissaries to help remedy our relations with Brigantia. I noticed the way Emmeline looked at Lance even back then. I have always suspected she fancied him.
What?
I wish you the best of luck, Emmeline. I'm sure you will capture his heart. I grin as I pass a rosy-cheeked Emmeline. Rootin' for you, sis. You got this. The first thing I notice upon my return is that Fritz is seated beside my window. The minute I step inside, he looks up at me. He eyes the mask with a smile.
So Emmeline delivered the mask to you. What do you think?
I think it's beautiful and mysterious. Fritz laughs. The sound of it relieves my heart.
You say it like you're not so sure.
Because I am not. I have never attended a masquerade before. I step forward and raise my eyebrows at him. I heard from Emmeline that it is you who suggested this. May I ask why?
I'm sorry, Lucette. It was for an entirely selfish reason. I wanted to give you a mask, and I wanted to see you wear it. I had a lot of fun designing it for you.
You made her this mask? It's kind of cute, because it's like, you saw me in a mask, I want to see you in a mask. Just 'cause. Fritz, you designed this mask?
I did. I wanted to do something special for you. And also...
He leans forward, eyes glinting with mischief.
In a masquerade, one can show off a completely different part of themselves. It's like being a masked performer in a theater show.
He leans back and laughs.
I thought it would be nice to be someone else for a change.
Someone else?
You'll see.
I don't like the sound of this. I'm not ready. I'm not prepared. He stands and crosses his arms.
Before we head out to our practice, you remember earlier in the throne room I mentioned a trial?
The trial that involved his mother. Yes, I remember. You said you would tell me more about the incident when you were feeling up to it.
Well...
He looks at me a little uncertainly.
I've been thinking about it since this morning, so I'd like to share the story with you now, if you don't mind. I'm afraid it's a very dreary tale, though.
You know that I am used to those sorts of stories by now, Fritz. 2 years ago, my life was a nightmare. But Fritz shouldered those miseries with me. He tried to protect me from them. The least I can do is try to understand his own sadness. I will listen regardless, Fritz. So please, tell me. What happened?
I told you before I lost my mother when I was very young, right? I was only 3 years old.
That means this was before I was even born. Before Mother's reign. I put a hand to the pocket where I keep Fritz's knife. His mother's knife. Before, he told me that if she'd had this knife on the day she was killed, things would have been different.
Have I ever told you that my mother was a teacher, Lucette?
I look at him wide-eyed. No, you have not.
She was a language teacher. She was the reason I grew up learning bits of other languages.
Adiuva.
Even after she died, I read her lesson plans because I thought they would make me feel closer to her.
I cannot help but recall the word that Fritz taught me before. The one he said was from an ancient language. Adiuva. Did his mother teach him that word? Or did he learn it after she died?
Anyway, I digress. My mother was a language teacher who took on many students. Nobles, commoners, children. She would teach anyone who had the motivation. My father always told me she loved what she did. So she was happy. We all were.
He leans against the wall with a sigh. Despite the sunlight blanketing the room, the air feels dreary, heavy.
Then she took on the student that would eventually kill her. My father says he was a Brigantian nobleman who wanted to learn the Cedelian language.
From Brigantia?
Most likely it was because he had business connections within Cedel.
That does not seem like such a strange request. Cedel is a neighboring kingdom after all. It makes sense that he would have connections there.
Anyway, Mother used to visit this man every other day. He paid my mother more than necessary, and was a fast-learning student. But then one day, word of a scandal began to spread around Angielle.
Scandal, you say?
Word was, the nobleman was involved in some illegal trade with Cedelian businessmen. My mother could confirm those suspicions. She found proof of the illegal trade deals in the nobleman's own letters. Apparently, the letters had gotten mixed into my mother's lesson plans by accident. They were written in a language only she understood. Shortly after my mother notified the king, the nobleman mysteriously disappeared. The day after, my mother was found murdered in an alley. The knife in her chest had been bought that day by a young man no one recognized. It turned out he was a hired killer.
I stare at Fritz in shock. You believe that the nobleman sent a killer after your mother because she spread a rumor about him?
It was the truth, not a rumor. A truth that soiled his reputation.
Fritz's eyes are stormy, his mouth set in a tight line. At first I think he is glaring at me, and then I realize he is glaring through me. His anger is reserved for a memory.
The killer was brought to the palace to be tried. He confessed that he was only a hired hand, but nothing came of questioning him about his employer. The hired killer never had any physical contact with the nobleman who hired him. My father suggested torture as a means of getting information out of the murderer, but the king refused. The killer was sentenced to a lifetime in prison, but the nobleman who paid him was never found, and so he was never tried in court. Though my father tried to link the nobleman to the murder, King Gennaro argued there was no conclusive evidence that he had hired the killer.
I mean, Gennaro was right, there was no conclusive evidence. It would have all fit, but it's not conclusive.
It was all circumstantial evidence.
My father must have investigated further. There is no way he would let such a crime go unpunished.
Yes, the investigation was extended, but nothing conclusive was found. Though my father tried to keep the investigation running, the king eventually disbanded the effort, claiming they were only hitting dead ends.
The look on Fritz's face is so mournful that I cannot help reaching for his hand. All I want is to anchor him in the present, to get him away from his memories. I squeeze his hand and Fritz turns to me with a grimace.
After that, nothing happened for a while. I was too young to understand where my mother had gone. My father became distant. I distinctly remember him disappearing for long stretches of time. He was gone longer than he had ever been before, and I almost always had someone else in the manor with me.
His expression flatlines.
Then one day he came home covered in blood, and he told me that justice had been served.
Oh, okay. I stare at him. He killed the nobleman?
I didn't realize it until much later, but yes. He made him confess, and then he killed the nobleman himself. My father punished the nobleman where the law had not, and yet...
Fritz shakes his head.
I have never felt closure. My father hated that the king was so lackadaisical about the investigation. He believed that the nobleman was pardoned on account of his status. From then on, my father held a grudge against the king. After my mother died, he became stricter, tougher. He began to doubt everyone and everything, and he dealt out justice with an iron fist. He didn't hate the king then. He still thought he was noble. He still believed in the honor of the knights. He didn't become truly incorrigible until after the war, when Hildur was locked in the Tenebrarum. Before that, he was jaded but kind. After Hildur, though, after he saw what ruling with an iron fist could do to keep people in line.
Fritz crosses his arms and groans.
Oh, back then, I always wanted to believe in the goodness of people. But now I understand where my father was coming from. The strong walk over the weak.
His shoulders sag.
That is what I realized when my father used me 2 years ago.
His gaze settles on me again, quiet and forlorn.
I believe in fair trials. I believe that people deserve retribution for the crimes they commit. This crime was not murder, but... You were stolen, Lucette. They had a knife to your throat! Sometimes I think about what I would be if I lost you, Lucette. I wonder if I would come to hate the world just like my father did.
He goes silent as he slumps in his chair. Perhaps the reason Fritz was so impacted by that trial was because he believed I should have been harder on someone who could have taken my life.
Well, there you have it. The story of my mother's death. I'm too young to remember it myself, but I've put the pieces together over the years.
He looks at me expectantly.
What do you think?
What do I think?
About the verdict. Would you have done anything differently from the king? Would you have let the nobleman go so easily? Would you have shown the same lenience?
I mean, honestly, yes. I'm still not convinced he actually was the one who killed him, because your father could have just tortured him into saying something that wasn't true in the end anyway. Wouldn't it be wild if the rest of this raid is just figuring out who actually killed his mom? What if his dad killed his mom? I'm so sus of Alcaster. Like, maybe he thought his wife was having an affair on the side or something. I don't know. Probably majorly overthinking this, but I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know. But to answer your initial question, Fritz, there wasn't enough evidence. Yes, there was a lot of circumstantial stuff, but nothing that I could conclusively be like, yes, guilty as charged. So yes, I would have shown the same lenience. I can tell by the way his expression falls that my answer takes him by surprise. As much as I want to say no, I also know that there is a reason the court has specific procedures for doing things. I think the same logic applies to other criminals too. Even if we have suspicions, we cannot act on things that have not been proven. We can only judge what we see and what we witness, not what we assume. Alcaster ought to have brought the nobleman's confession to court and meted out justice that way, no matter the feelings he had for the king. I try to measure Fritz's reaction, but he only looks thoughtful. I'm sorry, Fritz.
No, don't be.
He smiles at me gently.
Above all else, I believe it's most important for a trial to be fair. You're far more knowledgeable when it comes to things like this. Besides, it makes sense for a ruler to look at things objectively. Hearing your rationale gives me hope that justice is still feasible within the boundaries of all these rules.
He shakes his head, the soft smile never leaving his face.
What's in the past stays in the past. I think hearing your opinion makes me feel a little better. It's funny. My intention was to tell you more about my mother, but in the end I learned something about myself, too. You really are a wonder, Lucette.
Okay, I was just about to say, you say that, but your right choice indicator says differently. But then, ba-ding! Fritz pulls me to my feet and kisses my forehead. Then, abruptly, he pulls me into a hug. Fritz?
Thank you, Lucette, for hearing me out.
I rest my head on his shoulder. You never need to thank me, Fritz. I want you to be open with me. I pull away so that I can plant a quick kiss on his lips. Now, shall we continue this conversation during our lesson? Fritz smiles at me. He places a hand on my back as we walk toward the door.
Yes, let's.
We exit the stifling room and walk out into the breezy corridor. The rest of the week passes by in a blur of meetings, classes, and practices. When I am not busy practicing with Fritz in the forest, he takes me to town. There, the two of us go searching for evidence of discrimination against witches. Ever since I spoke with Chevalier, I have been unable to rest. Fritz has agreed to help me gather information, and, unsurprisingly, he is able to compile more evidence than me. He may no longer be a knight, but he is still incredibly good at work that requires subtlety or stealth. By the end of the week, the two of us have compiled a long list to present to the counselors upon our next meeting. Have we run into Waltz at all? Because I'm still worried about him. I am grateful that the week has come to a close until I realize belatedly that the masquerade my family has been preparing for is tonight. Masquerade, paper faces on parade. I'm so excited for this masquerade. Fritz makes me promise that I will attend before departing to discuss some important matter with my father. What's happening at this masquerade? I feel there's a lot of secret meetings with Dad, and I'm like, The time for the masquerade comes sooner rather than later. It is not long before darkness cloaks the hallways and guests begin to pile in. I exit my room and make my way toward the throne room. The mask on my face feels heavy, even though it is perfectly suited to my face. No one has seen me wearing it yet, not even Emmeline. Okay, so you're wearing that dress from Rod's Root. Interesting. I hope it does not look too ostentatious. I put a hand to one of the dress's inner pockets. Tucked inside is Fritz's knife. It is a strange good luck charm, but it makes me feel more confident as I walk into the throne room. Always good to have your knife on hand. The first thing I notice upon entering the throne room is that everyone is masked. Most of the women are wearing beautifully designed gowns that shimmer with the dark colors of nighttime. The men don black coats and vests and wear bright smiles that offset their dark masks. Some of the ladies smile and laugh behind feathered fans. I take in the sight, wondering at the atmosphere of mystique. I am startled when the announcer beside the door appears and, with a bow, calls my full title and name to the gathered crowd. I search the faces of everyone gathered, but the guests' expressions are hidden behind their fans. My heart tightens at the sight. Why am I so nervous? I begin to make my way down the stairs, offering words of greeting to all those who approach me. I cannot help noticing the nobles are more brazen on this night. Ladies titter and grin behind their fans, and more than a few men wink at me. It is like they are different people. I am still meandering through the crowd and searching for familiar faces when I notice a man in attire similar to Fritz's. Fritz? The man turns, but it is not Fritz, only some masked nobleman. I quell the disappointment inside of me and turn around to begin my search anew. I swear, if he's dressed in a Varg outfit, I'm gonna lose my mind up in here.
Looking for someone, Princess.
I nearly stumble right into the man behind me and have to take a few steps back to put some distance between us. I look up and freeze when I see his mask. Damn you. First of all, damn you. Second of all, damn it. I thought that mask was part of the magic. How did you get that? Did you have to make it? I do like the diamond motif. Very nice. Well, I knew this was happening. I knew. I'm so intrigued, though, why you wanted to do this. I'm very, very intrigued. Both his eyes and his mask are so familiar, I cannot help but be shocked. His face, complete with the cocky grin, gives me a strange sense of déjà vu. I cannot speak, only stare at him dumbfounded.
It's been a while.
The look on his face and the mask. It is Varg's face. But no, it cannot be. Varg does not exist anymore. Not as his own person. It has only been a few hours. Fritz's eyes twinkle with mirth.
Sarcastic as always, I see.
He takes a step forward.
I'll have you know I plan on going by a different name tonight.
Oh?
Tonight, you may call me Varg.
Why do you insist on shattering my heart into a million pieces, Fritz? I stare at him nonplussed. Sheesh. Although I gotta say, this is giving me such strong Phantom of the Opera vibes, and I am living for that. Oh, he holds out a hand. The grin never leaves his face.
What do you say to just one dance, princess? Come on. I don't bite.
I look at Fritz quizzically. What does he hope to accomplish with this change in character? He always looks so pained when he remembers the things he did as Varg. So, why?
What? Cat got your tongue?
I mean, he's done all this for a very specific reason. I'm not sure if it's because he's still rejecting that side of him and this is his attempt at accepting it once and for all? But whatever it is, he went to great lengths to make it happen, so... What? No wolf puns? You've lost your touch.
Oh.
He takes a step toward me, and though I cannot read his eyebrows, it is impossible to miss the smirk on his lips.
I may be a bit out of practice, but I think I'm better at wordplay than a certain dumbstruck princess.
The difference between us is that I know how to speak without demeaning a person. I expected more flamboyance from you. Varg. Fritz shrugs.
Sorry to disappoint, princess. Next time I'll make sure to dress in bright, gaudy colors just for you.
He presses a kiss to the back of my hand. Then, much to my surprise, he pulls me toward him with a grin.
Shall we dance?